I'm sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the old, chipped mug that's been with me for more years than I care to remember. It's just a regular Tuesday evening, but somehow it feels like the weight of my entire life is pressing down on me. I'm Emma, a 45-year-old woman who feels like she's living a life filled with more regrets than joys. My husband, Richard, is sitting across from me, scrolling through his phone, utterly disinterested in anything I have to say. I met him when I was just a bright-eyed 20-year-old. He was charming, charismatic, and everything I thought I wanted. But here we are, 25 years later, and I can barely recognize the man I fell in love with. "Dinner was good," I say, attempting to start a conversation. He doesn't even look up. "It was okay. You've made better." His words sting, but I'm used to it. This has been my life for the past several years. The man I married, who once looked at me like I was his entire world, now barely acknowledges my existence unless it's to criticize me. I remember when I first introduced Richard to my dad. My dad was a police officer, a man who had seen the worst of people in his line of work. He took one look at Richard and said, "Emma, that man is bad news." But I was young and in love, and I thought my dad was just being overprotective. "Dad, you don't know him like I do. Richard is a good man," I had insisted. "Emma, I've been a cop for over 30 years. I know how to read people. That man is going to bring you nothing but trouble," my father had replied, his voice laced with concern. But I didn't listen. In fact, I did something I now deeply regret. I cut my father out of my life. Richard suggested it, saying we didn't need negative people who didn't believe in us. And like a fool, I agreed. For 25 years, I didn't speak to my dad. I didn't call him, didn't visit, didn't even tell him when I had my daughter Lily, who's now in college. My thoughts are interrupted by Richard's voice. "Are you even listening to me?" I realize he's been talking while I was lost in my thoughts. "Sorry, what were you saying?" "I was saying that you need to start taking better care of yourself. You've let yourself go. And it's embarrassing," he says, his tone cold. I feel a lump form in my throat. This is my life. A husband who finds every opportunity to bring me down. And as I sit there, taking in his harsh words, I can't help but think that my father was right all along. My phone rings, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glance at the caller ID and my heart skips a beat. It's a number I haven't seen in over 2 decades. It's my dad. I answer, my voice shaky. "Hello?" "Emma, it's your dad. I need to talk to you. It's important." His voice is weak, nothing like the strong, confident tone I remember. "Dad, I'm so sorry for everything." I start, but he cuts me off. "Emma, I'm sick. The doctors say I don't have much time left. I have cancer." The room spins around me as his words sink in. My dad, the man I turned my back on, is dying. And suddenly, all the years of silence, all the missed opportunities to make things right, weigh heavily on me. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'll come to see you. I'll help in any way I can," I say, tears streaming down my face. After ending the call, I turn to Richard, hoping, maybe foolishly, for some kind of support. "Richard, my dad is sick. He has cancer. I need to help him." His reaction is like a slap in the face. "Good. The man never liked me. Can't wait for him to be gone." His words are like a knife to my heart. In that moment, I realize just how blind I've been. My husband, the man I chose over my own father, is cruel and heartless. And I can't help but wonder if my life would have been different if I had just listened to my dad all those years ago. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed in our bedroom, my hands trembling. The room feels cold, even though it's a warm night. Richard's words keep echoing in my head. Can't wait for him to be gone. How can he be so heartless? I thought I knew him, but it seems I've been living with a stranger. I pick up my phone again, dialing my dad's number. It rings, and then finally, he picks up. "Emma?" His voice is weak but filled with hope. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet, but I will find a way," I say, my voice choked with emotion. "Emma, you don't have to. You've got your own life." "No, Dad. You're my father. I should have been there for you all these years. I'm going to make this right." We talk a little more. He tells me about his condition, about the treatments he needs but can't afford. My heart aches. I've missed so much, and now, when he needs me the most, I feel helpless. After the call, I sit there, lost in thought. Then something inside me clicks. I can't let my father suffer because of my mistakes. I need to do something. I go to the living room where Richard is watching TV. Richard, I've decided. I'm going to help my father. He needs money for his treatments. I'm going to use our savings. He looks at me like I've lost my mind. You're going to do what? Are you crazy? That's our money, Emma. We saved that for us, for our future. There won't be a future if I let my father die knowing I could have helped him. I can't live with that, I say, my resolve firm. He laughs, a cold, mocking laugh. So the prodigal daughter returns. You think playing the good daughter now will make up for all the years you ignored him? It's pathetic. His words sting, but I don't let them sway me. I don't care what you think. I'm doing this. I go to our home office and start transferring the money. It's a lot, almost all our savings. But it doesn't matter. This is for my dad, for all the years I wasn't there for him. When I finish, I feel a sense of relief, but it's short-lived. Richard storms into the room, his face red with anger. You actually did it. You gave our money to that old man. He's my father, Richard. He's dying. What was I supposed to do? Just let him suffer? You were supposed to think about us, about our life together. But you've always been selfish, Emma, always thinking about yourself. I'm stunned. How can he twist this into something about him? Selfish? I'm trying to save my father's life. How is that selfish? He doesn't answer. Instead, he turns and leaves the room, slamming the door behind him. I'm left standing there, feeling more alone than ever. But there's also a sense of determination inside me. For the first time in years, I'm standing up for what I believe in. It's scary, but it also feels right. I pack a small bag with some clothes and essentials. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I can't stay here, not with Richard. Not now. I write a note, telling him I'm going to my dad's, that I need some time to figure things out. I don't know if he'll even care, but I leave it on the kitchen counter anyway. Then, with my bag in hand, I step out of the house. The night air is cool on my skin, and as I walk to my car, I feel like I'm taking the first steps towards a new life. A life where I'm no longer bound by regrets and what-ifs. A life where I can try to make things right, even if it's a little too late. The drive to my dad's house feels endless. Streetlights blur past, and I'm alone with my thoughts, a mix of fear and determination. I haven't seen my dad in over 25 years, and now I'm rushing to him in the middle of the night because he's sick and I'm all he's got. When I finally pull up to the familiar old house, my heart is racing. The place looks much the same, though a bit more worn. I hesitate for a moment before getting out of the car. What am I going to say? How is he going to react? Taking a deep breath, I walk up to the front door and knock. It takes a few moments, but then the door opens, and there he is. My dad. He's older, frailer, but it's undeniably him. Emma, he says, his voice cracking. You came. I nod, fighting back tears. I'm here, Dad. I'm so sorry. He steps aside, letting me in. The house smells the same as I remember, a mix of coffee and old books. We go to the living room and sit down. It's awkward at first, but then we start talking, and it's like the years start to melt away. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have been here, I say, my voice thick with emotion. It's okay, Emma. You're here now. That's what matters. We talk about his illness, about the treatments he needs. He shows me the medical bills, and they're staggering, but I reassure him that I've got it covered. He tries to protest, but I won't hear it. Then I tell him about Richard, about how he reacted when I said I was going to help. I don't go into all the details, just that we had a fight and that I needed some time away. My dad listens, his expression somber. I warned you about him, Emma, but you were young, in love. I understand. But you were right, Dad. You were right all along. He reaches out, taking my hand. What are you going to do now? I shake my head. I don't know, Dad. I just don't know. We sit there for a while, just talking. It's strange, but it feels good, like we're making up for lost time. Eventually, I get up to leave. I've got a lot to figure out, and it's late. But as I'm about to walk out the door, my dad stops me. Emma, wait. There's something you should know. He goes to his desk and pulls out a folder, thick with papers. I've been keeping tabs on Richard. Ever since you married him. I knew he was bad news, and I wanted to protect you, just in case. He hands me the folder. It's all in there. His business deals, the women, everything. I wanted you to have it, just in case. I'm stunned. I take the folder, feeling its weight. Dad, Thank you. He nods, a sad smile on his face. I always wanted what was best for you, Emma. Always. I hug him, holding back tears. I know, Dad. I know. The morning after I visited my dad, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, the folder he gave me lying unopened in front of me. I'm scared of what's inside, scared of what it means for my life, my marriage. But I know I can't ignore it. Taking a deep breath, I open the folder. There are bank statements, photos, notes. It's overwhelming. As I start to sift through the papers, the reality of my situation begins to sink in. Richard has been living a double life, and I was too blind to see it. There are photos of him with other women, some of them looking way too cozy. There are bank statements showing large amounts of money being moved around, and notes about shady business deals. It's a lot to process. I feel sick to my stomach. How could I have been so naive? How could I have ignored all the signs? I spend the morning going through everything, and by the time I'm done, I'm shaking with anger and betrayal. But there's also a sense of clarity. I know what I need to do. I call my dad. Dad, I looked through the folder. It's a lot. I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't want to burden you with it, but you needed to know. I understand, and thank you. I'm going to confront him. I can't let this go on any longer. Be careful, Emma. He's a dangerous man. I will be. I have to do this, for me, for us. After we hang up, I get ready. I feel like I'm preparing for battle. I put the most damning evidence in a smaller folder and head to Richard's office. When I get there, his secretary tries to stop me, but I push past her. I storm into his office, and he looks up, surprised. Emma, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I say, my voice steady even though my hands are shaking. He smirks. About what? About this, I say, throwing the folder on his desk. About your lies, your cheating, your dirty business. He goes pale, but then he regains his composure. You don't know what you're talking about. I know everything, Richard. My dad has been keeping tabs on you since we got married. It's all here. The women, the money, everything. He starts to get angry. Your dad? That old fool? He's just trying to break us up. He's always hated me. He was right about you, and I was too blind to see it, but not anymore. He stands up, coming around the desk. You're not going to ruin me, Emma. You're my wife. You're supposed to stand by me. Not anymore. I want a divorce, Richard. I want out of this sham of a marriage. He laughs, a cold, bitter laugh. You think you can just walk away? You think you can take me down? I won't let you. I'll ruin you first. I stand my ground, even though I'm scared. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I know the truth, and I'm not going to let you control me any longer. He looks at me, really looks at me, and I can see the realization dawning in his eyes. He knows he's lost. Get out, he says finally. Get out and don't come back. The next few days are a blur. I spend most of my time at my dad's house, trying to figure out my next move. The thought of going back to the house I shared with Richard makes my skin crawl. I can't face him, not yet. My dad is a rock during all of this. He listens, offers advice, but mostly just lets me talk. It's comforting, being here with him. It feels like I'm making up for lost time. One afternoon, we're sitting in the living room when my phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, but I answer it anyway. Hello? Is this Emma Richards? A man's voice asks. Yes, it is. Who's this? My name is Detective Harris. I'm with the City Police Department. I'd like to talk to you about your husband. My heart skips a beat. What about him? We've been investigating him for some time now. We believe he's involved in a number of illegal activities. We received some information recently that has accelerated our investigation. I glance at my dad, who's watching me closely. What kind of information? It's best if we discuss this in person. Can you come down to the station? Yes, of course. I'll be there as soon as I can. I hang up, feeling a mix of fear and relief. It's happening. It's really happening. Dad, the police want to talk to me about Richard. They think he's involved in illegal activities. My dad nods. It's about time. You need to tell them everything, Emma. Don't hold back. I won't. I'm done protecting him. I head to the police station, my mind racing. When I get there, Detective Harris is waiting for me. He's a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a serious demeanor. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Richards, he says as he leads me to an interview room. Please, call me Emma, and thank you for seeing me. We sit down, and he gets right to the point. We've been investigating your husband for some time. We believe he's involved in a number of fraudulent activities, including money laundering and embezzlement. I nod, trying to keep my composure. I believe you're right. I have some evidence that might help. I tell him everything. About the folder my dad gave me, about the bank statements, the photos, the notes. I tell him about the confrontation with Richard, about how he threatened me. Detective Harris listens, taking notes. When I'm done, he looks at me, his expression serious. This is very helpful, Emma. With your testimony and the evidence you've provided, we can build a strong case against your husband. What happens now? I ask, feeling a mix of emotions. We'll continue our investigation, gather more evidence. It's likely we'll need you to testify in court. Are you prepared for that? I nod, feeling a surge of determination. Yes, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he pays for what he's done. Detective Harris nods. Good, we'll be in touch. And Emma, you're doing the right thing. I spend my days helping Dad around the house and taking him to his doctor's appointments. His health seems to be holding steady, a small blessing in the midst of everything else. One afternoon, while we're sitting in the living room, my phone buzzes with a message from Detective Harris. My heart leaps into my throat as I read it. Case moving forward. Charges filed against Richard. We'll need you to testify. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Dad, they're charging Richard. It's actually happening. Dad looks up from his newspaper, his eyes soft. Good. It's about time he faced the consequences. The day of the trial arrives. I wear a simple blue dress, wanting to look presentable, but not overdressed. Dad insists on coming with me, even though I tell him he doesn't have to. I'm not letting you face that man alone, he says, his voice firm. The courtroom is intimidating, with its high ceilings and wooden pews. Richard is already there, looking smug in his expensive suit. When he sees me, his expression darkens. I take my seat, trying to ignore the knots in my stomach. Dad sits next to me, a solid presence at my side. The trial begins. The prosecutor lays out the case against Richard. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. The evidence is overwhelming. I can see Richard squirming in his seat. Then it's my turn to testify. I take the stand, my hands shaking slightly. The prosecutor asks me to tell the court about my relationship with Richard, about the money he took, the abuse, the threats. I speak slowly, making sure to tell the truth, the whole truth. Richard's lawyer tries to shake me with his questions, but I stand firm. I'm not afraid of Richard anymore. When I'm done, I step down from the stand, feeling like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. Dad gives me a small smile, his eyes proud. The trial goes on for several days. Witnesses, evidence, testimonies, it all blurs together. But through it all, I can see the case against Richard building, piece by piece. Finally, the jury goes out to deliberate. The wait is agonizing, every second stretching out endlessly. Dad and I don't talk much, just sit together in silent support. Then, the moment of truth arrives. The jury is back. We're called into the courtroom. My heart is pounding so hard I can barely hear anything else. The judge asks the jury for their verdict. The foreman stands up, a slip of paper in his hand. We find the defendant, Richard Richards, guilty on all counts. A wave of relief washes over me, so strong I almost feel dizzy. Richard is staring at the jury, his face a mask of disbelief. The judge thanks the jury and then turns to Richard. Given the severity of the crimes and the evidence presented, I hereby sentence you to 10 years in prison and order the return of all funds embezzled from Emma Richards. Richards' face crumples. He starts to say something, but the bailiffs are already leading him away. As I walk out of the courtroom, I feel like I'm walking on air. Justice has been served. Richard will pay for what he's done. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally start to move on. Dad puts his arm around me as we walk. I'm proud of you, Emma. You stood up to him. You did what was right. I lean into him, feeling tears prick my eyes. Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you. We walk out of the courthouse together, ready to face whatever comes next. Life after the trial feels different, like waking up from a long, turbulent dream. The house is quieter now, just me and Dad. We've settled into a comfortable routine, looking after each other. But there's one thing I haven't done yet, one loose end that still nags at me. My daughter, Lily. I've been thinking about her a lot, about how I've been a less than perfect mother, how I let her grow up in a toxic environment. The guilt gnaws at me every day. But today, I decide, is the day I'll try to make things right. I pick up my phone and dial her number, my hands trembling slightly. Mom? Lily sounds surprised when she answers. Hey, Lily, can we talk? Maybe meet somewhere? There's a pause, and for a moment, I'm afraid she'll say no. But then she agrees, and we decide to meet at a small cafe near her college. I arrive early, nervous energy making me fidgety. When Lily walks in, my heart aches. She's grown into a beautiful young woman, but there's a wariness in her eyes that I hate to see. Hey, I say as she sits down. Hey, she replies, her voice guarded. I take a deep breath. Lily, I'm sorry. I know I wasn't the mother you needed. I let you down, let you grow up in a bad situation. I'm so sorry. Lily looks at me, her expression unreadable. Why now, Mom? Why after all this time? I know it's late, way too late, but I've left Richard, your father. He's in jail now. I've been trying to make things right, and I realized I need to start with you. Lily's eyes flicker with something, pain maybe, or disappointment. Mom, I spent years wishing you'd leave him, wishing we could just be a normal family, but you always chose him over me. Her words sting, but they're the truth. I know, and I can't change that, but I'm here now. I want to be better, do better, if you give me a chance. We sit in silence for a long time. I can see Lily wrestling with her emotions, and I don't blame her. I've hurt her, and it's not something that can be fixed with a simple apology. Finally, she speaks. I want to believe you, Mom, but it's not easy. I've got a lot of anger, a lot of hurt. I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance to show you that I can be a better mother, that I can be someone you can rely on. Lily sighs, running a hand through her hair. Okay, we can try, but it's going to take time. A wave of relief washes over me. Thank you, Lily. That's all I'm asking for. We talk for a while longer about her college, her plans for the future. It's awkward at times, but it feels like a start, like maybe there's a chance for us to build something new. Months pass, and the world around me starts to take on a new shape, a new meaning. Dad's health has been improving steadily. The doctors call it a miracle, but I think it's the love and care we've been surrounding him with. He's even started going for short walks around the neighborhood. Today, as I watch him sitting on the porch, reading a newspaper, a sense of calm washes over me. I walk over and sit beside him, taking in the peaceful morning. You're looking better every day, Dad, I say, smiling at him. He looks up, his eyes twinkling. Feeling better too, Emma. It's like I've been given a second chance at life. I nod, feeling a surge of gratitude. We both have, Dad. Just then, Lily arrives. She's been visiting more often, and with each visit, I feel our bond strengthening. She waves at us, a bright smile on her face. Morning, you two, she greets cheerfully. Morning, Lily, Dad replies. Join us. We were just enjoying the morning sun. Lily takes a seat, and for a while, we sit in comfortable silence, basking in the warmth of the sun and each other's company. Mom, I've been thinking, Lily starts, breaking the silence. I want to help people who've been in situations like ours. Maybe volunteer at a shelter or something. My heart swells with pride. That's a wonderful idea, Lily. Dad nods in agreement. Using your experience to help others, that's a noble path. Lily's eyes are determined. I want to make a difference, even if it's small. I reach out and squeeze her hand. You already are, sweetheart. Our conversation drifts to lighter topics after that. Plans for the weekend, a new recipe I want to try, the book Dad's been reading. It feels normal, and for the first time in a long time, I feel content. I have my father, my daughter, and a newfound strength within me. I've survived the storm, and now I'm ready to embrace the calm after it. Ready to build a new life, a better life. A life where I'm not just surviving, but thriving. I had always been an early riser. By the time 7:30 a.m. hit, I was usually up, mentally preparing myself for the day. But that day, just as I was getting up, my phone rang. It wasn't the usual work-related call, or even one from a friend. It was Mark, my husband. Strange for him to call when he was just in the next room. I picked up. Hello? Jessica, you need to move your stuff out of your room, he stated, without any warmth or greeting. Confused, I sat up straighter in bed. Why would I do that? It's my room. Sarah needs it. His voice was firm, almost as if this wasn't up for discussion. I frowned. Sarah was Mark's niece, a 25-year-old who had lived a life of ease and reliance on others. She hadn't worked a day in her life, instead choosing to take from her grandparents and anyone else willing to give, including Mark. In her eyes, I was just the stupid auntie, a term she often used behind my back, though sometimes bold enough to use in front of me when she wanted to belittle me. However, to demand my room, this was a new low, even for her. Why does Sarah need my room? I tried to keep my voice steady, but it trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief. She's moving in, and she wants that room, Mark replied, his tone dismissive. But that's where all my things are. Where am I supposed to go? I could feel the sting of tears, but I held them back. Just find another room or put them in storage. I don't know. Figure it out. I was in shock. After everything I had done for this family, this is how he treated me? Our marriage wasn't perfect. In fact, we had been sleeping in separate rooms for a while now. But to be told to vacate my own space in my own home for a girl who had shown me nothing but disrespect was a new low. I took a deep breath. Mark, I am not moving my things. That's final. There was a pause. We'll see about that. And with that, he hung up. The conversation left me rattled. I sat there for a few moments, trying to process what just happened. Our relationship had its issues, yes, but this blatant disregard for me, for our life together, was something I had never expected. And as the weight of the situation settled in, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this stand. Whatever game Mark and Sarah were playing, I had to be ready for it. This was my home, my space, and I wasn't going to be pushed around any longer. I walked through the front door after a grueling day at work, hoping for a moment of peace. But instead, I found Mark and Sarah sitting in the living room, their faces grim. It was clear that my refusal to give up my room had set things into motion. Sarah looked me up and down with a smirk, her arrogance palpable. So, I heard you don't want to give up your room, she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. That's right, I responded, my tone firm. I live here, Sarah. That room is mine. Mark interjected, trying to play peacemaker. Jessica, can't you just move your stuff to the guest room? Why should I? Why does she get my room? I replied, looking from him to Sarah, who sat smugly, enjoying every moment of my discomfort. Because she's family and she needs it, Mark answered, a hint of irritation creeping into his voice. I'm your wife, Mark, or have you forgotten that? I'm family too, I snapped back. Sarah laughed, her voice high-pitched and mocking. Come on, Auntie Jessica, it's just a room. You can't be that attached to it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. It's not about the room, Sarah. It's about respect. You can't just come in and demand things as if you own the place. She rolled her eyes. You're making a big deal out of nothing. All you have to do is move your stuff. Is that so hard? Enough, Mark intervened, raising his hand as if to silence us. "Jessica, just move your stuff. This isn't worth the fight." I stared at him in disbelief. He was my husband. He should have been on my side. Instead, he was siding with a niece who had repeatedly shown disdain for both him and me. I felt betrayed. "Mark, I won't be bullied into giving up my space. Not by you, not by her," I said, pointing at Sarah. "This is our home, and I deserve to be treated with respect." Sarah laughed again. "Respect? From what I've seen, you don't deserve any." I was taken aback by her audacity. How had this young girl become so emboldened to disrespect me in my own home? "Sarah, you might think you can walk over everyone, but not me. I won't be pushed around," I said, with as much dignity as I could muster. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "This is getting us nowhere. Just move your stuff, Jessica." I shook my head. "No, I won't." The atmosphere in the room grew tense. The three of us locked in a standoff, each waiting for the other to blink. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Sarah stood up, her face red with anger. "Fine, keep your stupid room, but this isn't over." And with that, she stormed out, leaving me and Mark in an uncomfortable silence. I could tell this was only the beginning of our troubles. The next morning, as I prepared my morning coffee, my phone buzzed with a notification. A text message from an unknown number. I opened it, curious. "You should have given me that room. You'll regret crossing me." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I knew instantly who it was from. "Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "You don't scare me, Sarah. This is my house, and you can't dictate what happens here." Almost instantly, her reply came in. "This isn't over, Auntie Jessica. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Just as I was trying to process this new threat, Mark walked into the kitchen. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "What's wrong?" I asked, showing him the messages. "Look what Sarah's sending me." Mark looked at the screen for a long moment. "She's just upset. Don't let her get to you." I frowned. "This isn't just being upset, Mark. She's threatening me, in our own home." He sighed. "I'll talk to her. But you have to understand, she's had a tough life. Losing her parents at a young age wasn't easy." I interrupted him. "That doesn't give her the right to behave this way. She's an adult, not a child." Mark looked away, clearly torn between supporting me and defending Sarah. "I'll handle it, okay?" But the conversation was far from over. That evening, as I was settling into my room, Sarah knocked on the door. I opened it, and she stood there, her posture defiant, eyes cold. "Listen, Auntie Jessica, I don't know why you're making things difficult. Just give me the room, and all of this can be over." I took a deep breath. "I told you, Sarah, this is my room, my house. You can't come in here and make demands." She smirked. "Maybe not, but I can make life very difficult for you." I looked her straight in the eye. "Is that a threat?" Sarah leaned in, her voice a low whisper. "Consider it a warning." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The weight of Sarah's warning pressed on me. What was she planning? What was she capable of? And why was Mark so blind to her manipulations? The only thing I knew for sure was that I had to be prepared. Whatever Sarah had in store, I wasn't going down without a fight. Days melded into weeks, and each day seemed grayer than the one before. The walls of the house felt suffocating, and Sarah's smug demeanor was a constant thorn in my side. From leaving unwashed dishes in the sink to borrowing items without asking, she seemed intent on testing my patience. But nothing could have prepared me for the horror that awaited me on one fateful evening. Returning home from work, I immediately sensed something was amiss. The usually locked front door stood slightly ajar. Hesitantly, I pushed it open, half expecting to find a robbery in progress. The living room was untouched, but a trail of torn fabric leading upstairs caught my attention. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I followed the trail to my bedroom. The sight that greeted me was heart-wrenching. My clothes, years of curated outfits, gifts, and personal memories, all cut up and strewn carelessly around. The violation of my personal space was a feeling I couldn't describe. "Jessica, what did you do?" I heard Mark's voice behind me, dripping with accusation. What did I do? I turned, a mix of disbelief and anger. Your niece did this. Sarah appeared beside him, feigning innocence. Why would I ruin your things, Auntie Jessica? Maybe you did this for attention? Mark looked at me, his gaze colder than I'd ever seen. Did you do this, Jessica? Did you ruin your clothes to frame Sarah? My jaw dropped. You think I would destroy my own things? My cherished memories? Mark's voice grew harsher. Maybe you wanted a reason to kick Sarah out. My heart felt like it was shattering. The man I had once loved and confided in now looked at me like a stranger. I can't believe you'd think that of me. Sarah smirked from behind Mark, enjoying every moment of my pain. Maybe you should have just given me the room. None of this would have happened. I backed away, tears streaming down my face. I thought we were a team, Mark. How could you choose her over me? Mark's face was impassive. Maybe if you'd been more understanding, none of this would have happened. You brought this on yourself. The weight of his words was crushing. It was clear I had lost not only my clothes, but also my partner. The realization was devastating. That night, I packed a bag, knowing I couldn't stay in a house where I felt so alone and betrayed. I had lost the battle for the room, but the war for my dignity was just beginning. The weight of the past few weeks felt like 100 bricks pressing down on my chest. Every look, every word exchanged in that house, they all came rushing back. With my bag packed, I sat in the living room, the silence only interrupted by the ticking of the grandfather clock. As I waited for a taxi, the realization hit me. This wasn't just about a room, my clothes, or even Sarah. It was about respect, trust, and my place in this family. My phone buzzed, a call from Lisa, my best friend. Hey, Jess, she said, her voice filled with concern. I heard what happened. Are you okay? I don't know, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I feel so lost, Lisa. I never thought Mark would turn on me like this. Lisa sighed. Sometimes, people show their true colors when faced with difficult situations. Maybe this was a wake-up call. You're right, I murmured. But what am I going to do now? I've invested so much in this relationship and this house. You need to make a decision for yourself, Lisa advised, for your well-being and your future. Don't let anyone else dictate your worth. Lisa's words resonated deep within me. Mark's parents and Sarah had taken so much from me already, my peace, my happiness, and even my own space. But they couldn't take my self-worth unless I let them. It was time to reclaim it. Determined, I made my way to the bank the next day. As I sat in the financial advisor's office, I explained my situation. I want to ensure that my assets are protected, and I need to know where I stand financially, I said. Mr. Harris, the advisor, nodded sympathetically. We can definitely help with that. Let's review your accounts and see what we can do. As we delved into my finances, it became evident that I was the primary contributor to most of our investments and accounts. Mr. Harris looked up from the paperwork. Mrs. Thompson, it appears that you've been the major breadwinner here. If you decide to divorce, you have a strong case for a significant portion of these assets. My heart raced. Divorce. The word felt heavy, yet in a strange way, liberating. Could I really take that step? When I returned home that day, Mark was waiting. Where were you? He asked, his voice dripping with suspicion. I went to the bank, I replied calmly. I needed to review our finances. His face paled. Why? Because, I began, taking a deep breath, I've decided to file for divorce, Mark. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly belittled and betrayed. Mark looked stunned. Jess, you're overreacting. We can work things out. I shook my head. No, Mark. This is my decision. I deserve better. And with that, I took the first step towards a new chapter in my life, one where my worth wasn't determined by anyone else but me. A few days later, I found myself seated in the office of a renowned attorney, Miss Angela Reynolds. Her reputation for handling difficult divorce cases was what drew me to her. As I relayed the events that led to my decision, Angela listened attentively. It's clear that you've been through a lot, Angela commented, jotting down some notes. I've handled cases like yours before, and I can tell you, standing up for yourself is the best decision you could make. I just want what's fair, I replied, looking out the window at the bustling city below. I've supported Mark and his family for so long. It's time for me to protect what's mine. Angela nodded. You have a strong case, Jessica, especially given that you've been the primary contributor to your shared assets. I hesitated, then added, There's something else. I suspect Mark has been unfaithful. Angela looked up, her gaze sharp. Do you have any proof? A private investigator, I began, taking out a folder with photos and notes. I hired 1 month ago. The evidence is clear. Angela skimmed through the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page. This changes things considerably. With evidence of infidelity, the court is likely to view the case in your favor. Relief washed over me, but there was a gnawing feeling at the pit of my stomach. I had to confront Mark with the truth. That evening, I returned home to find Mark in the living room, surrounded by old photo albums. Memories of better times. Jessica, he began, his voice shaky. I've been thinking, maybe we can work things out? I placed the folder on the coffee table, the photos facing up. Mark's face drained of color as he recognized the woman in the photos. You've been cheating on me, I said calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. Mark's eyes darted between the photos and me. Jessica, it's not what it looks like. Save it, I cut him off. I've known for months, Mark. I just wanted to see if you'd ever come clean. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Why didn't you confront me sooner? I hoped you'd change, I replied. But instead, you chose Sarah over me. You let her destroy our home, our trust. Tears streamed down Mark's face. I'm so sorry, Jessica. I never meant to hurt you. I shook my head. Sorry doesn't change what you did, Mark. It's over. And just like that, the weight that had been pressing on my chest lifted. It was a painful revelation, but one that set me on a path to reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, the legal process was a whirlwind. I felt like a regular at Angela's office, diving deep into the finances and property that Mark and I shared. Mark's actions not only severed our emotional connection, but also jeopardized our shared assets. The evidence of his infidelity and Sarah's destruction of my personal belongings were prominent factors in the proceedings. One morning, I received a call from Angela. Jessica, I've managed to get a court date. It's sooner than I expected, given the circumstances. That's great news, I replied, a fire igniting within me. I was ready to see this through. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was filled with tension. Mark sat across from me, looking defeated and tired. Sarah was also present, her arrogant demeanor unchanged. The judge, a stern-looking woman with sharp features, looked through the files presented before her. It seems the evidence is quite clear, she said. Infidelity, financial misconduct, and deliberate destruction of property. I caught Mark's gaze, looking for any sign of remorse, but there was only emptiness. Sarah, on the other hand, was fidgeting nervously. Angela, clear and assertive, presented our case. Your Honor, my client has not only been the primary breadwinner, but has also financially supported Mr. Mark's parents and his niece, Sarah. She's been through emotional trauma and has lost personal belongings due to the actions of the defendants. Mark's lawyer tried to present their side, portraying Mark as a loving husband who was misled by Sarah. But the evidence was overwhelming. After what felt like hours, the judge gave her verdict. In light of the evidence presented and the actions of Mr. Mark and Miss Sarah, the court rules in favor of Miss Jessica. I exhaled deeply, feeling a wave of relief. It was a victory, not just legally, but also personally. I was reclaiming my life. Outside the courtroom, Sarah approached me, her bravado gone. Jessica, I'm sorry, she began, her voice quivering. I never thought things would go this far. Your actions have consequences, Sarah, I replied coldly. It's time you learned that. Mark tried to catch my attention, but I walked past him. There was no room for reconciliation. I had given him chances before, and he had thrown them away. It was time for both of us to face the outcomes of our choices. Retribution, it seemed, was finally mine. Spring's rejuvenating spirit mirrored the changes in my life. Gone were the gloomy days in the big, suffocating house. Now, I enjoyed the city views from a modern apartment, a fresh start, and a place of my own. My morning routine was interrupted by a call. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, but I had a hunch. Taking a deep breath, I answered, "Jessica, it's me, Mark." I stiffened. "Why are you calling, Mark?" His voice, a mix of desperation and hope, came through. "Things have changed, Jessica. I realize now how wrong I was. Everything's fallen apart since you left. I was wondering." "Get to the point," I said curtly. "I need you, Jessica," he blurted out. "Financially, everything's a disaster. Sarah took advantage of my bank accounts, ran up huge debts. We had to move in with my parents. They sold the house to cover her debts, and now we're all squeezed together, constantly fighting over money." A bitter smile formed on my lips. "So you're calling because you want help? Money?" "Not just that," he pleaded. "I want you back, Jessica. I made a huge mistake." I took a moment, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. "Mark, while I sympathize with your situation, you made your choices. I've moved on, and you need to find your own way now." Before he could respond, another voice piped up in the background. Auntie, help me out just once. I promise I'll change." It was Sarah, her voice sounding very different from the arrogant and demanding tone I remembered. I sighed deeply. "Sarah, I hope you find the path to change truly, but it's not my responsibility to fix the consequences of your actions." The call ended with a heavy silence. It was difficult, hearing their desperation, but I knew I had to stand firm. To rebuild myself, I had let go of the toxicity that once consumed me. There was no turning back. As the days turned into months, I immersed myself in my work, found joy in little things, and adopted a playful cat named Bella. Life had its challenges, but it also presented beautiful moments of growth and contentment. One evening, while reflecting on the past, I realized that despite the pain, those experiences shaped me into a stronger, wiser woman. I felt an inner peace, knowing that after every storm, a new dawn awaits. And as the sun set that day, I embraced my new life, grateful for the journey and the lessons it brought.